When I kick the bucket, I want to come back as a farting dust mummy like the ones in the movie Spookies.
The proper name, El Capitan, is Muckmen.
Fine, I want to come back as a muckman, but I'm telling you now, I'm making a t-shirt that says farting dust mummy.
That would be great, but they don't wear clothes.
Well, we're going into the fall soon. Spookies was shot in the summer. Nowadays, a farting dust mummy might want to wear something warm to help take the chill off.
Yeah, but why am I even arguing this?
My thought exactly. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome. My name is Callie, and I'm the producer for MonsterKid Fury. Joining me is Rich from MonsterKid Central. Hi, Rich.
Howdy.
And Rick from Film Fury.
Hola.
Hi, baby.
Hey, baby.
All right. Go ahead and tell us what we'll be talking about on this freestyle episode.
Okay, well, just like our Blair Witch one, we're going to go into some news little items that I pulled up. Wanted to get both y'all's feedback on them.
Cool.
One is actually more of just a memorandum, if you will. Last week was actually the anniversary of Wes Craven's passing, which I did not realize. And it's been so quick. So many years have gone by. And I was listening to a podcast you guys should check out called The Best Movies Never Made. And they actually had a writer on talking about a biography he wrote about Craven. And there was some really interesting tidbits on films he tried to make outside the horror genre. So if you guys get a chance, you should really listen to that. But I'm telling you, man, it would have been nice if he had stuck around, because I can imagine, what else he would have been able to do over, say, the last 5 years, really, because I think he would have had more opportunity to kind of branch out, even away from, obviously, Scream. But I think, if anything else, the streaming issue, streaming wars, if you will, they need content so badly. I think they would have definitely, kind of like John Carpenter was given some opportunities over the last couple of years to do different things in television. Maybe they would have allowed Craven to do the same.
Yeah, that would have been great. I miss that guy a hell of a lot.
Like Romero, he seemed to be one of the kindest guys out there.
Yes.
Never could hear. I never heard a bad word about him. The one time I did see him at a convention from a distance, he just seemed so nice to everyone. One of the interesting things on that podcast, it appeared that Craven really wanted to do a ghost story. There were a few attempts at adapting a novel at one point about a ghost at West Point Academy, and then he was working on the remake for Pulse, which, of course, is a Japanese haunted story.
Right.
So it seems like that was something he just never got to achieve, unfortunately. And I think that would have been very unique for him, I think.
I agree. I think that would have been great.
And of course, I still wanted to see a Shocker 2, but not enough people went to see Shocker 1, unfortunately. I would have loved to seen Mitch Pileggi come back as that character.
Yeah, that would have been fun. Although it's really funny to see that movie and then watch the X-Files, because he was so buttoned down in the X-Files.
Oh, absolutely, and he's foul-mouthed and nasty and everything else in Shocker.
Right. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to watch. But again, he's a solid actor.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of really nice people and some people you regret meeting in the long run, I will neither confirm nor deny whether or not that would be connected to a talent related to the next topic. It appears that Halloween is going to have not just one, but 2 video games on the way from the creators of the recent Evil Dead game.
Really?
Yeah, and John Carpenter apparently is going to be a creative consultant and be hands-on, not just kind of stepping away with a paycheck, apparently.
Right.
So, because we all know how he loves video games. So,
yeah, that's true.
And
paychecks. So
yeah,
that it works
out great for him at that point, doesn't it? So,
it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no details at this point on what the game's going to be about exactly. Again, same creative team from the Evil Dead game, which, though it didn't sell very well, apparently it did get good reviews from both gamers and horror fans alike. So
Well, I'm really hoping that they find a way to really bring you into the game. That's my dream.
the last time we had a monster style freestyle kind of thing, we all felt older because we talked about the 25th anniversary of the Blair Witch Project. And
Exactly.
are you ready to feel older again?
Am I going to feel more older than I mean?
It'll add on to it. It'll be icing on the old cake, probably. So
Mhm.
we've professed our love for a movie called The Babadook quite a few times, I think, since we've been doing the show.
Yeah,
It turns 10 years old next month. Isn't that amazing? And to think that the film still doesn't have really truly the following we both feel, all three of us feel that it should have. That's wild to me.
yeah.
But it's
That
coming back to theaters September 19th.
Holy crap! I cannot believe that. Yeah, it's a solid film, um, with some really good performances in it,
Oh,
and
Essie Davis, man, I go back to her every time. That
yep,
chick deserved a nomination. I seriously feel that the Oscars should have been, yeah, we're gonna at least nominate her.
yep, and just everything about it. It had a very classic black and white feel to it. Um, it looks almost like it was shot in a different decade,
I
and
agree.
and beautifully done. I mean, truly. Uh, I many times wanted to call it an art film, but I didn't want to damn it. I thought, yeah, you call it an art film, you're going to turn a lot of people off. But it truly is. It's one of those rare movies that you can take almost any frame from it, and it looks like a well composed photograph.
Absolutely. And your comment about not calling it an art film, I feel you there because it's one of these amazing movies that unfortunately were included in the genesis of the elevated horror movement.
Right.
And I feel that's so unjust because it's so much better than anything from the
Yes.
elevated horror movement.
Even though we know how much you love the elevated horror movie.
Yeah, I know. It's just my favorite stuff.
Hmm.
But we're also getting, in addition to the joy of being able to go to see it at the theater again, we're getting a new Blu-ray special edition with
Interesting.
2 hours of bonus features, but the most upsetting, no commentary again. The
Uh,
previous release, no commentary from anyone involved with the production, and the same thing. So,
that's really I've always had that as a bad sign. Um, if you can't find people who want to talk about how good their movie is, that's kind of sad, and I think it sticks out like a sore thumb. I think while you're reading the extras list, there's actually almost a flashing light that says no one wanted to talk about this movie, and that
see,
sucks.
but I always wonder if it's that or if it's the producers of the Blu-ray who don't go out of their way to try to obtain those folks. And to be fair, maybe sometimes they do want some type of compensation for their time, which I sort of understand to
No,
a
I do
degree.
too.
And I would just love to hear Jennifer Kent talk about the idea and how it came to be and everything. I would just love to hear about that.
I completely agree. That would be a terrific commentary.
And now the oddest bit of news, probably from what the last year, in my opinion,
Okay.
a sequel apparently is in the works. Take it for what you will. Spookies 2. Now
Seriously?
this was reported recently at a Rhode Island film festival,
Well,
and it was
Rhode Island, it's got to be true.
must be accurate, right? But some guys over at the Barron's Hideout podcast was at the Dark Arts Festival in Rhode Island, and they interviewed the original writer of the film, and he said the film has gained a cult following since its release on Blu-ray, and they're actually seeking and raising the financing for a sequel.
Yikes.
And Frank Farrell, who was the original co-writer and producer of the film, is spearheading everything.
My God.
Now the odd part, and let
I'm
me
sorry,
find this.
that's not the odd part?
The odd part is this. His quote, let me find it. Let's see. I don't want to even make a typical sequel. I want it to be an anti-sequel. Which I don't even know
Okay.
what that
Because
means exactly, because
yeah,
that kind of tells me all you want to do is make another movie, call it Spookies 2, and get your movie financed. That's
Yeah. So
that's
this is
kind of
going to
what
be
it
like
sounds like.
Troll 2.
Exactly. That's what I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious about.
Yeah,
So,
I'm reluctantly curious about it.
well, this is very similar to Hobgoblins, because remember, Hobgoblins gained a cult following after being shown on MST3K. Then the original writer director got financing to do a part two, and part two has nothing to do with the original film. No characters come back. It's just another movie with somewhat similar of a concept. Now, of course, I'm used to this because of the '90s video boom. We had so many movies that were only sequels in name only.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I there were quite a few of them. I'm sure some of it, in some instances, has to do with the rights issues. Um, you
right.
know,
Well, this is even worse. Okay, here's another quote. The way I'm doing it, it's almost intended as a mockery of what happened to our original film. So I guess it's going to be sort of meta, I guess is what they're trying to say.
okay,
Yeah.
if that's the case, it might be it might be fun because the production, pre-production, and post-production on that movie is a clusterfuck, and that's putting it mildly.
Yeah, we were looking into that actually, because I decided I was going to show Callie the original, so she knew what we were talking about partially today.
And you
'Cause,
and you showed it to her.
yeah, and
Okay, Callie. No, wait, hold on.
we
So
we
what?
need the out the theater response.
So
What
what
did you?
did you think?
I was actually impressed by all of the special effects.
Okay.
Okay, I shouldn't say special effects. The monsters.
Okay.
And not all of the monsters. There were only specific monsters that were really, really good.
Okay.
And the
And
rest of them were kind of like, oh,
I agree with
okay.
you completely. There are some monsters in there that are extremely good. There are others that are just as bad as the others are good. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
full spectrum. You're absolutely right in that respect.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah,
But
okay. So at least you got you got to see it. And without well, I don't care if you give something away. I'm not going to give anything away right yet. But what about the
okay.
muckmen in the basement?
They look so cool. But I
Uh-huh.
was I was disappointed by the audio.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know. It's and
Mhm.
and and
Mhm.
there will be an entire story a little bit later on how that broke up a friendship of many years. So,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah, see, the
So,
other thing that makes me nervous about, or not nervous, but apprehensive that this is going to be a good movie is that apparently the gentleman who co-wrote and co-produced it, he really hasn't done much over the years in terms of
uh-huh.
directing.
Right.
Uh, Played little bit parts in films, produced something called Hell of the Screaming Undead. So really, I'm not saying it couldn't be a good movie, but he hasn't been flexing his muscles very much over the years.
Right. But
And if he just kind of comes into it with the point of view of, well, I'm just going to poke all as many stabs as the people responsible for the original film coming out so bad, is it really going to be a good film at that point? You know?
well, you could also have the opposite effect though, where and I'm going to throw out a Beatles reference, but uh, George was underappreciated during most of the Beatles run. He'd get one song. If he was lucky, he got one song per side. Most of the times, he got one song per album. And when when the Beatles finally broke up and he came out with his first solo album, it went through the stratosphere. I mean, it was just insanely good because it was all this material that he's been working on. So we could have that version of it where the director has had all of these visions of the way he would do things, hasn't had a chance to for whatever reason. And he could come out with something where, every shot is like the opening of Jaws. It could be phenomenal. So I don't know. You're right. It's going to be a crapshoot, but isn't Spookies 2 just the idea of it? Isn't that a crapshoot?
And of course, that's if this is actually going to get made. I mean, let's be brutally honest here. You and I right now could say that we're planning a sequel to Street Trash
Yeah,
and that we're seeking the financing, but it doesn't mean shit. We've just put it out in the ether is all we've done.
right.
For all we know, he doesn't truly own the rights. Um, again, since it was produced, I guess we're going to go into that since we're going to talk more about the original film. But does he even have the legal ability to do this is another question. And again, he was at a Rhode Island, convention, and he just happened to say this. So no one else has reported on it. It got picked up by Bloody Disgusting because they were at the event, and no other site that I can see has really talked about it.
Right. Well, the good news is that Vinegar Syndrome, who released the Blu-ray, has gotten to be a fairly large company. They're not working out of a garage anymore, and maybe they could co-produce it. Maybe they find out, because that's what happened with Birdemic 3. Is the guys from Riff Tracks put some money into it to get it done
Really?
because it's good for them. I don't know that they ever got around to doing Birdemic 2, but I would show Riff Tracks Birdemic to somebody who had never seen Riff Tracks before and wanted to know what they do. Um, I think that was a gold mine for them.
Oh
So
yeah, that one
the
was so funny.
yeah,
Actually, Kelly got mad watching that movie
I
because
couldn't
she
get
was
through
like,
it.
she goes, "You haven't made a movie yet," and this guy made a movie. He got
yeah.
his movie released. You know,
Well, might I suggest that you watch his other work, because it's just as maddening. I rolled my eyes so many times I actually saw the inside of my head. It was just one of those deals. So anyway,
Was it a Rift Tracks one or no?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, I might be able to get through it
yeah,
then.
they did that one, and a movie called Relic. Um, in fact, they might have, if I have my story right, they might have given him a little bit of money to finish Relic, under the, but as part of the deal, they get to do
the
Relic,
riff tracks. Yeah.
and that was a scream too. I mean, that is a great combination between his stuff and Riff Tracks. But anyway, I know we're getting off the subject, but maybe Vinegar Syndrome can add to the pot and get it done. I don't know. I don't know how much um, sway they have with it, but if they're pretty sure that they're going to make a good buck off selling the Blu-ray, I'm sure they also know people who do financing.
Yeah. It's so weird though. I have such a love-hate relationship with that company because you and I've had that talk before. They really have created the dynamic of we're going to take these movies that are truly horrible, these badly made films, and we clean them up, if you will, but they throw them in fancy packaging with a slipcase, and it's just so bizarre because it's celebrating the mediocrity of some of these movies.
Right.
They're barely good films, and they're turning around and selling them for like 40 to $50 a pop because they get an artist to do an amazing cover that's like, that is so much better than anything in the movie right there. Now, they have released some
And
great stuff, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
So they may turn out to create, if that was the case, if they were able to finance Spookies 2, they could possibly just end up doing what happened with Spookies 1. Because after doing the research, I was never aware of this, you probably were. The original Spookies was produced by a DVD distributor at the time,
yes,
a gentleman who released a lot of American horror films overseas. Now, you have a very unique look at this movie, and it all comes from me. It comes from the first time we ever met at a convention.
yes.
So, as many people who have met me at shows or whatever have known before, if you know me, on Facebook, we sold at many horror conventions, and a bulk of our stuff for a period of time was from the gray market. And one of the titles we carried was Spookies.
And one of the
So
title and one of the
there,
titles I could never find was Spookies.
and you were so excited when you saw it on the table.
Absolutely. I went bug nuts. I mean, I just was so happy. And so as I've said before on here, I carry a DVD player with me, and I I went upstairs and put the disc in, and it didn't work. I would have had to walk back down and say, "This one doesn't work. Do you have another copy?" And it all worked out in the end. But the main thing is, he and I became buddies. I mean, like instantly. Um, I and I'm not saying that I had any talent for this, but I was able to put him and Brad together, and Brad Lineweaver and I had some say in Mondo Cult magazine, and we were able to get Rick his. I was your first writing
um,
credit.
Second official
Second,
published credit. Yeah.
okay, very cool. So he and I have been buds ever since. That's the reason that we both do this. And there's really almost no chance that we'll end up killing each other because we actually like each other. Um, but that could change. I mean, shit happens, he could get big headed and I could storm out in a huff or a huff and a half. So, but anyway, so that started this friendship so many years ago. It's not even funny.
Michael Lee, who was in charge of Vipco, which was the company that released many American horror films that ended up on the Nasties list, the video Nasties
Yeah,
in the UK.
absolutely.
And he found that he had so many difficulties getting unrated releases of these films and whatnot. He apparently was like, well, if I produce a movie, then I have full control over it, and I can control how much gore goes into it. I know the framework of what we're looking for in the UK. So he decided that he wanted a haunted house movie, and so came the Spookies.
Yeah, what an interesting tale. He wanted a haunted house movie, and what the fuck happened? But
Because
yeah,
for anyone who's seen the movie, and again, my wife just saw it for the first time today. It's a movie that has two storylines going on at the same time that never verge, meet, aside from some ridiculous elements where no one is in the same frame at the same time in
right.
the attempt to connect these two storylines.
Well, one of my favorite parts about the whole look of Spookies is that there's a character named Lewis who uh, bounces in and out of these shots because, and of course I know a bit of the background, but the bottom line is he was an extremely busy guy because he was also doing a lot of special effects work at the time. So you would have shots of everybody in the room, and then they cut to a close up, and where Lewis was, he's not there anymore because he's not in the shot anymore, because he's in somewhere, 6 miles
Doing a
away doing
special
the
effects job.
effects. So, so that's an interesting part of the movie right there, is that you get the amazing disappearing character.
Well, let's do this. Let's start it from for anyone who hasn't, been enamored with the imagery of this movie. The storyline is it starts with a 13-year-old boy who has ran away from home because he's upset that his parents have apparently forgotten his birthday.
Yep.
It is what it is. So he apparently decides he's going to stop to have a snack from his backpack when he is confronted by just some guy who just happens to be, in the same woods, which obviously that can't be unsavory in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And he talks to this kid, asks for a light, and they have a little conversation about, why are you here? Why'd you run away from home? Yada yada. And he's actually able to read information off this kid and be like, oh, you ran away from home because they forgot your birthday. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an astute point, but okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So
So specific.
yeah, it's like, that's really specific. And the guy doesn't look like a bum necessarily, so I'm not sure what the point of this character was exactly. If he was meant to be a
Oh,
bum,
I'm
he
sorry.
was
So you understand the point of the other characters?
yeah. Oh, I know, but
Okay. Go
so
ahead. Sorry.
so so at that point, the boy decides he's going to continue on his journey,
Hmm.
and our mysterious woodsman is killed by a humanoid cat creature, and you're just
I call him werewolf pirate boy, because he's part werewolf and part pirate. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's and I jokingly said once, so that's his hook. Um and I meant story-wise. So but anyway, yes. So it's okay, cat creature probably is closer than werewolf boy. So we'll go with cat creature.
So
Only
and
because it comes up later.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when you first see him, I also thought werewolf. So yeah.
And then we're introduced to two groups of people, and what we learn later due to production issues is the other movie that was shot, the original movie that was shot.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have two groups of people that are apparently friends. Are the two guys related? Are they brothers?
I don't think
The older one?
so. I think they're
It's
No.
like Demons. You have people driving around to get to a destination, and you never really find why they're going anywhere. Am I correct? Did they say what their
that's
destination was?
Yeah, well, yes, the driver in the first vehicle was supposed to know where another party was happening or where a party was happening.
Okay.
But it's unclear if he actually did know because he was driving around aimlessly while the people in the second vehicle were getting upset that they had been driving around aimlessly.
But their ages are so drastically different. I kept thinking maybe they were meant to be brothers or something, because dude looks 10 years older than everyone else.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
So bizarre.
Um,
I think it has to do
the
with the actors that he could get. So,
Yeah,
So strange. So in the meantime, the kid stumbles upon a huge house, mansion, sort of a thing. Goes inside to find the place is quite desolate. There's no one around, but on the kitchen table, there's a birthday layout. There's
right.
cakes. There's a
Right.
cake. There's presents, balloons,
So of
and
course he thinks it's
that it's his
a
parents.
surprise party for him in a house that he has no history with. Um, Basically, it's like walking into, your neighbor's house who lives down the street, finding a birthday cake and saying, "Oh yeah, this must be my surprise party."
Right. Now, see, now I'm gonna have the moment of writer superiority here because I do suffer from imposter syndrome. But Jesus God, who the fuck wrote that and thought any of that worked? That's the part that confuses me. Like, grown people wrote it and said that makes perfect sense that a 13-year-old kid's gonna run away from home. Makes perfect sense he's gonna run into this homeless person,
so his name's actually written on the cake. It
Billy,
does
right?
say "Happy Birthday,
Billy.
Billy."
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
just so weird, though.
So
Why would he
it's
think
his
his
party.
parents, how did they know he was going to stumble upon that house?
Yep.
And then he has his scare moment where a tiny wind up toy robot appears out of nowhere. He picks it up, turns it off, puts it on the kitchen table, goes back to, you know, the buffet in front of him, if you will. And then he hears the sound again, and the robot's back on the ground making the same sound.
And I don't know about you, but I was terrified.
That's the other thing. He didn't have the same reaction. He didn't find it strange. He was just like, "Oh, okay, everything's funny. Oh, my parents, they're playing a joke on me. Guys, where are you?" And
Yep.
he just continues this thing of like, "Oh, I'm so innocent and trusting."
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's the thing. People are always quick to say, well, it's so bad because they meshed these two movies together. And it's like, no, it's so bad because it's so bad. I mean,
Because even
this,
if you took the films independently,
right.
because eventually what happens is the kid flees the house. He's ultimately killed by the cat boy, buried
Eight,
alive, which I'm pretty
18
sure they
minutes in.
violated some child labor laws there when they have a
Right.
kid out, you know, a 12 to 13-year-old kid out at night. You're throwing him into a a
A
grave,
shallow grave.
and you're throwing dirt on him. I'm pretty sure
Well,
that wasn't a stunt man. I think it was the kid.
you're saying that like there's something wrong there.
And
Um,
then our
and it's
two groups
18.
of buddies who have been looking for a party stumble across the same mansion. And what ultimately happens is a series of Evil Dead kind of ripoffs and crazy stuff going on. But Rich is right, everyone's right. These storylines are just pushed together, and that's not what makes it bad. It's both movies are just bad anyways.
Right.
So you have a unique history with it, though. So I kind of want to have story time because I don't think I've heard even a small bit of your connections, experiences, and knowledge on the film. Since the Blu-ray had no commentary whatsoever, I'm very interested in what you have on this.
Well, I don't have a hell of a lot. I was friends with somebody on the production. I also met through this friend of mine, uh, both directors. They were nice guys. I wasn't on the set, but I met them. I guess at their apartment, and so I would hear these stories about how well things were going, and all of a sudden, those stories turned into basically what a nightmare it was. You know, how they were doing everything on the cheap, how they weren't giving people who needed a chance a chance. They decided on their new direction, and there were people who would show up for work and the doors would be locked.
No, the movie was released in '87. What year was this roughly that they were shooting? Was it because since they shot the movie twice effectively, was it done that quickly, or was this over a series of years, like from the time the first movie was lensed, if you will, to them shooting this new stuff?
If I had to guess, I'd say 85,
Wow.
maybe. I'm not sure. It was interesting at the time, but I was also I, I've been privy to discussions about different things, and to be quite honest with you, they all go the same way, whether it's an effective film or not.
I have a question.
Yes,
Which storyline was that? The people
the
in the house, or was that
the people in the cars going to the house.
okay? So the one with the good monsters.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they did shoot an entire film, though they were having headaches during it, and then it was edited, and then the producer stepped in to say, "No, we need to do something different now." Does that make sense?
that's what that's what was told to me.
Okay.
Um, I think it was a new money person, which is quite often the case. But uh, everybody associated with especially with the effects, um, was really caught off guard, um, and I absolutely sympathize with that. Although thankfully I never went through it. But yes, the production they were working on was called Twisted Souls, which I love. I think that's one of the great titles. Um, and
Both are
I
really very good titles, actually.
well,
I like Spookies too, though.
what they did was Spookies. See, and to me, Spooky sounds like a breakfast cereal. But what the interesting part of that was that it was because of Gremlins and because of those kind of movies that they went with Spookies, because there were a few offshoots from the Gremlins idea that ended in that IES. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but I want to see Twisted Souls. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
that's what I want to see when the movie comes on. I don't want to come on. It again, it sounds too kid-ish, and I know that it's not.
From what I could tell, the Twisted Souls portion of it, I was really interested in knowing that storyline.
Right,
And it's cut so badly that unfortunately you can't piece any of it together to where it makes sense and or you can gather what the story was going to be about.
right,
But I feel like it was the beginning of something really good.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I know
And there
that's not the guy's fault.
no, it is a shame because there were some real highlights to that movie visually. I mean, it opens up on a slab of concrete that is covering a tomb, and the concrete is moving, and it's cool. I mean, it's very cool.
I
You
love
know,
that effect. Yeah.
concrete has chains across it, and it just. I thought that was a beautiful effect. And I thought the gravestones for the most part, were great. By the way, to anybody who doesn't know, one of the weird things about it is there's a gravestone. There's a graveyard, basically just feet outside the front of this house.
Mhm.
And there's actually a discussion somewhere in the movie where they talk about was the house built on a graveyard, or was the graveyard built on on a house property? But
That's a
that's
good line, poor execution with the
yes.
actors.
So I thought that was, pretty clever. I think everything that takes place outside, for the most part, is great visually. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about the writing, but certainly visually, they had a lot of really good looking stuff in that.
See, and I think again, no matter how bad the movie is as a whole, with these two storylines being meshed together from different camps, it still doesn't excuse it doesn't excuse a lot of the badness that the movie would have had even if it came out as Twisted Souls only.
Correct.
The acting is very haphazard. It's I wonder if any of them were actually professionally trained actors in any way, shape, or form,
One would hope not.
because I don't think anyone delivers really believable dialogue at any point. They
Yeah.
don't nail a line, because even in the worst movie, you'll come across an actor that's like, oh, that one line, he delivered that really well. It's too bad they couldn't do it for the whole movie.
Right.
So I know that from things I've done. There's moments where my non-professional actors knock it out of the park, and then there's other times, yeah, you're a non-professional actor. Here they just feel non-professional across the board.
And here you have characters who are not saying believable things, but they don't appear to be from the same movie. Like, you have Duke, who's obviously from the Lords of Flatbush. I don't know
Hmm.
what the hell he was doing in it. And you have Puppet Boy, who is and I'm using quotes to do comic relief, who walks around with a hand puppet through maybe half the film. Um, and is one of the more annoying characters in cinema history.
I've seen that movie like 4 times, and it wasn't until today, watching it with her, that I realized he's wearing a T-shirt of himself and the puppet.
Yeah,
I did not
yeah.
notice that.
It's just so freaking annoying that you get to the point with most of the characters where it's like you're definitely rooting for the monsters. It's like, kill this guy already. Um, Lewis, the guy who pops in and out of the movie because he's actually working on something else. Uh,
Right.
Lewis is and we're going to have spoilers here. This is that kind of a deep dive where you have spoilers because we're going to spoil the whole damn thing. But he's gone at the 28-minute mark. He's gone. Um, and the
Wait, is
kid,
Lewis the one who gets pulled underground?
yeah. And
Okay.
then Billy is gone 18 minutes into the film.
And I didn't understand why that happened.
I will say that's rough to me. That's rough for a movie like this. And I'm all for putting something that's going to jolt you, maybe on a parental level or on a grandparental level. I can see. I don't want my grandkids doing a scene like that because you're right. It wasn't a stunt man. They were throwing dirt on this kid,
Yeah, they were.
and
They
and
were
and a fair
absolutely using
amount
him.
and a fair amount of it. And it
Now, with Ricky saying that he feels all of these were not professional actors, I'd argue that the kid was probably the best one. I really did like his acting, although he seemed naive and,
yeah.
not easily spooked. He was easily the best one there. And then yeah, he's gone
Oh
in
yeah.
28 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
And that might have been budgetary. That might have been, and in fact, I would assume Lewis was budgetary too. You don't
Mm.
want one of your characters to pop in and out of the film throughout the whole thing, so you get rid of that character early. And the guy who played Lewis, I know for a fact, could handle the getting sucked into the ground part, because he was a special effects person. And of course, the dialogue that they gave poor Lewis was god awful because most of the time it was like, "Carol, are you okay? Is everything all right, Carol? Carol, you good? Carol." And it's like it's the same line that
Well,
this poor guy had to say, in 17 different ways. That's nobody wants that.
what I love is you had 3 directors for this movie, and no one went over to the actor portraying Lewis to say, "You're being pulled under the ground. Under the ground. Can you act a little more concerned?" Because he just doesn't seem that. He's just kind of like, "Oh, ah, oh, ah."
Yeah,
You know, can you scream maybe just a little bit, maybe?
yeah.
Nope.
I know this. There's so much of that in the movie, and I'm going to say something that, Callie, if you look down on me for the rest of my life, I will totally understand that. But don't have, and I'm stressing this to the future filmmakers out there. Don't have the actress with
Hold,
the
hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on. I was just about to say, if you mention the redhead,
don't have don't have the actress with the best rack ha- keep them intact throughout the whole damn movie, because I that would have almost saved the movie. Almost. Almost. If at least there could have been some of that. Look at that. Rick doesn't even want to be a part of this. He just cut off his camera. He's like, "No, I'm not dealing with her tonight. Not if you're gonna talk about that." But it's true. And even when there's a part which we will, I promise, be getting to, where she's lying on the ground and hands come up and engulf her. Whoop, I hit my
hmm
mic, sorry. And engulf her, and nobody there, they stay away from that area completely. So that had to be something where it's like, there's any touching, there's going to be a lawsuit.
Because if you even watch Ghostbusters, when Dana is
oh,
attacked
they
in her
get
chair,
Dana.
you can see the ones that are grabbing. You can see it's like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I can't see behind here. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm so sorry."
to me it's like having what's her face be the stripper in Sin City, and she doesn't strip. Okay, whatever. And I understand that the woman in Spookies did not have the same situation. She was not playing a stripper, but come on. I wanted
Was
to see, you know,
was this L.A., New York, or
no,
Connecticut? Where
this
did
was,
they
I
shoot this?
believe it was, I think the entire thing was upper state New York. And I
I
might
kind
be
of I kind
wrong.
of figured that based upon the actors.
Yeah, and I might be wrong, but I have a feeling if I am wrong, I'm gonna hear about it. Um, but anyway, yeah, I think it was all upper state New York. Um, and and they had a lot of stuff going against them, so that part of it I completely understand. We are going to touch upon the fact that there's also a puppet master uh in the guise of an elderly man, and when I say elderly, I mean dead, or near death, who has his wife upstairs in a coffin and has kept her in that state for somewhat like 70 years,
Yep,
which
dead
is
on 70 years. Yeah.
a really good idea unless you happen to have seen, oh, let's see, The Black Cat, Dr. Fives, Voodoo Man. I mean, it's like, okay, we've seen this before, so it's not original. Um, and she seems to be a little out of her element too. Um, oh, and the old man who, by the way, is calling all the shots that are going on. Also,
Through the
as
visual medium of the
the
chessboard.
yeah, the we
They are my
right, the
pawn.
chessboard. He has some form of a relationship with the cat pirate boy, the pirate cat boy. All
He
right,
likes
there.
stroking him, I noticed. He very
Yes. Yeah, I know. And of course we might have to cut that out. No, I would just but yes, he likes petting him. And he also um Catboy also I think was supposed to be the brother of the kid who was actually,
the one who ran away?
no, not the one who ran away, the one who he introduces to his wife.
The little Jawa looking guy.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Who just
yeah. I
runs
The
out of
one
the
in the
woods for no
brown
apparent
yeah, I don't know
robes.
what the
reason. Nope.
deal is there, but I guess it was just a disjointed part of the script. So with everything going on, including more monsters than I've seen in 6 movies, um, with all that going on, including the 2 plots and, of course, the puppet master kinda guy, in the attic, uh, there's a lot to take in this movie. I mean, it's pretty simple to get confused.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that disappointed me was that there really seemed to be attempts to create a lore, like a mythology of what was going on, with their very unique, instead of a Ouija board, they kind of created their own version of a Ouija board.
Right.
I thought was really interesting. And then there was some attempt to explain, even in the second movie, that the old man could be like a sorcerer because he starts talking about magic and whatnot with his son. But it never connects. Like none of it is really explained. Like why is his wife in the coffin still looking like she's in her 20s after 70 years? Is she really dead? Is she alive? It's like it just
Right. They needed to explain that because it's also the same in Voodoo Man, in The Black Cat, and in Dr. Fives. They're all ravishing beauties in there, but the other 3 movies explained it.
Mhm.
And each is slightly different. But the basic thing is it's a form of suspended animation. And and there are different ways to achieve that. Voodoo Man obviously was through voodoo that it happened, but this was just, hey, I've kept you around for 70 years. You know, I guess I'm pretty special. You should be thanking me. And it's like, okay, but how come she still looks so young?
What I got was that he had been luring people to that house and either sucking their life force in order to keep her young.
Right.
Hence all of the gravestones that pop up out of nowhere when somebody dies or when
Yep.
somebody gets sucked down into the grave out front. And that is what is powering her youthfulness.
And
I
that
think
is
that's
the best explanation. Seriously, I'm not kidding here. That's the best explanation I've ever heard for what's going on, and something that I hadn't necessarily connected to. Um, but then the question becomes, why the hell didn't they talk about that even in post production? Because he does, the old man does have lines where he's not in the shot, where
Mhm.
he's just that kind of overlord kind of um disassociated voice. He also speaks through Carol. um
Mhm.
so that could have been handled in post production, even a portion of that, and I would have been on board. But to my knowledge, there's nothing like that. Or
Yeah, they didn't actually explain it.
or I just dozed at the same time every time I've ever seen the movie. So which I sincerely doubt, because I've seen it more than more than anybody should.
But it's okay because we have the wonderful suspenseful linking device between both storylines where when someone tries to get out of a room, Catboy's on the other end holding the door so they can't get out, and he's just like,
Right. Yeah. Even if there's 17 people pulling on the door, and he's on the other side, this, what is he, 4'10", 4'11", holding this door. Basically, they should have been able to dispense of him by just picking him up and throwing him 40 feet, down to the first floor or something. So yeah, that's wonderful. So obviously Pirate Catboy has massive strength.
No, because that means that they would have to be in the same scene together for
Well,
them to
yeah.
get their hands on him. And we know that would have been impossible.
Nope.
and it doesn't. They didn't even try to make it the same door. Like it's painted a different shade and
Right.
everything else. It's like it's close enough. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the special effects people for this movie had some credibility. I mean, Gabe Bartalos was
Yes.
one of them. I was fortunate enough to interview him
Oh,
for a magazine, and he's a trip. He's wonderful. Um, because I was talking about what I call, and we'll get to it, I promise, the farting dust mummies. Um,
Ah,
and he started laughing hysterically, and he said, "Is that what you really call them?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're muck men." I said, "No, I saw the credits, but dude, those are farting dust mummies." And he thought about it for a minute. He goes, "Yeah, you're right." So, he's a wonderful guy. I would love to get him as a guest, to talk about his career, because he's definitely one of us.
so do you have any background information by chance on why they're farting?
Okay, well, why don't we get to this part? Duke and Chesty are down in the basement, which of course is a wine cellar, um,
mhm.
and has kegs of wine in the wall that are bigger than humans. He's feeling frisky, so she puts an end to that by laying down on the floor on her back. So, okay. Hands come out of the ground and start grabbing at her, and she starts screaming. Um, and then these muck men come out of the ground.
Mhm.
Now, that's what they're called, but they start uncontrollable farting. And
Yep.
I'm not talking about an exaggeration. I don't mean, hey, they do some sound that sounds like farting. It's farting.
Mhm.
Um,
Continual.
and I do not get how you build any kind of suspense with somebody with three creatures who are farting even when they're getting beaten up, they're farting. And I did hear one of the producers, I believe it was a producer, say, no, that's them falling apart in essence.
Oh,
And I said, okay, but shouldn't that be like bubbling or snapping and popping or snap crackling and popping? Who in the production said, no, farting works?
I thought the farting was at the very beginning before they were falling apart.
That's
Was
true.
I misremembering?
No, you're not. You're not, but that's what they were saying. Well,
That's their explanation.
these things disintegrate, and that's, they're making that kind of. And the other explanation I heard was when you're walking through muck like that, it makes a sound.
A squish. Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, it does make a sound. I'm pretty damn sure it's not that one, but
But
whatever.
they weren't moving every time that sound
Nope.
happened. They were just in place,
So it's like, okay, so do they live on beans in this place? Is that's what it is? Hey, guess what's for dinner again tonight? It's baked beans.
And
So
was that a post-production decision?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That much I know. Because the person I know said, "Don't blame me." It was silent when I saw it.
If this was a noise that they were playing while the actors were there and this entire thing was being shot, none of them would have had a straight
Right,
face.
they couldn't have
I
gotten through it.
guarantee you. Yep. After watching this movie and seeing those muck guys.
You mean the farting dust mummies?
Yes, the farting dust
Okay,
mummies.
I'm sorry, I didn't know what you were talking about.
I made an immediate connection to Kevin Smith's Dogma movie, the Golgothan, the shit demon. I was
There you
like, oh my god, is that what that is? Because that looks like a shit demon to me. So
That's great.
With the
yeah,
sound.
Yeah,
Just as
because that was continual farting and it was funny. There
right.
was no scary.
This was such a weird choice to make. I can understand even if they had said to the director, "We're taking over your movie and we're making it a comedy." Okay, I could understand that. But that's the only time that they make something a comedy. So no, that's not it either. It's just stupid choice, or at least in my opinion.
Oh no, I agree completely. And
We agree.
I can see why the film has gained a following, and I don't mean with the so bad it's good. You already know I'm not part of that camp. I can't identify with that camp in any way.
Right.
But watching it today with Callie and her interaction with it, I really think it's almost like the equivalent of a visual fun house, a haunt. It kind of has that vibe because you have what happens when you go into a haunted house. There's no storyline. It's nonsensical. You just have things jumping out at you.
Right.
That's ultimately what Spookies becomes. It is a movie with just a bunch of monsters that aren't connected in any way. It's like, ooh, look what I'm going to do to scare you, and just moves on to the next thing.
Right.
And they are really amazing monsters. Again, you got the guy who created the Emer. So yeah, he put a lot of work into those creatures,
Mm-hmm.
probably on a very limited budget as far as I can tell. And he did some amazing stuff.
Right. No, I agree with that. I think you can see which ones were done on the cheap and which ones they actually had time for. And it's absolutely a shame. And maybe the attempt to do a Spookies 2 is a way to right wrongs. But I will tell you from the little I know about the background, if he did a Spookies 2 and made it about making Spookies, that I would see in a heartbeat.
Yeah, because you could do it like a one cut of the dead almost, something similar in that vein, if you will.
Yeah.
You could have a lot of fun with it. Have a newer group of filmmakers trying to either remake this movie or reboot it in some way could be really fun and interesting.
I completely agree with you, because I don't know how to do a sequel to what we all watched today, because all I keep thinking is, well, great, but you couldn't do it right the first time. Why am I checking in the second time?
One word.
Oh, go ahead.
Chesty. You'd
She
come
likes
back
the
for
nickname.
Chesty. Yep.
No, I would need some guarantees this time. I'm not watching a character like that for 90 minutes again without some form of payoff.
Well, the way I see it, you have a 13-year-old missing boy, so the police could come across the mansion in part 2, or maybe the family of the kid comes looking for him in part 2. There's just endless possibilities.
They're not looking for him. They let him
Right.
go. I mean, they basically said, yeah, you know what? Screw your birthday. It is a shame, because Spookies shows promise,
I agree.
a lot of it, and it was just torn up. I mean, somebody put it in the trash compactor, and unfortunately what they were left with is what came out. What came out of that trash compactor is what they said, okay, this is it.
See, and I think all the promise that the movie shows is probably what fuels the love for it from certain fan bases. I think you do
Yeah.
have the ones who are like, "Oh, this is horrible," but then I think the other ones that go, "No, but there's some good stuff here. There's this bit and this bit."
Well, yes. And if I can go into my story now, there is a lot of there's a lot of that in the story. There's going to be certain people who are shocked that I'm talking up Spookies here instead of calling it, the newest Plan 9. And the truth is, that's always been my feeling about it, that it is a better film. It's a better idea than a film, but the film had, for a long time, had some really decent things to say. And it only really, in my opinion, went to shit at the very end. And I don't mean at the end of the movie, at the end of production. That they unraveled a ton of stuff, a ton of good filmmaking in a very short amount of time. So there are people I know who think that I believe it's the worst movie ever made, and it's not. But as I said, I had a friend who worked on the movie, and I would hear constant, things about the movie. And so when it finally came out, and I think I was in California, and I found it in a rental store in California, and I was so psyched to finally see it, and it was bad. I mean, it was Spookies. That's the deal. And uh, what I could not for the life of me get past was the farting dust mummies. Now, again, that's a post-production decision, but it's a decision that was made. Somebody said, yeah, that's what the sound we have to go by. And it taints the entire scene, if not the entire movie. But it's certainly, that scene will never be taken seriously. And I'm wondering if it had gone, if the choice had been better and maybe scarier, and had like a soundtrack like Texas Chainsaw or Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, which are these manic art pieces of music instead of farting dust mummies. So anyway, when I got back from California, my brother from another mother Bob met me at the airport with his wife and my wife, and I looked at him and I said, "Boy, have I got something for you." And we went home, and the ladies went to see a tearjerker at the theater, and Bob and I watched Spookies. And the funniest damn thing was, after that farting dust mummy scene, it was just it was impossible for us to keep a straight face, even during the better parts of it. And so the girls come home, Eileen and Ricky come home, and they have tear marks on their face because they went and saw this horribly sad movie that was, a real tearjerker and everything. And they walk in, and Bob and I have tear marks on our face, but they're from laughing to the point where we didn't think we were going to live. We couldn't catch our breaths. We were laughing so hard because once we played the scene, we didn't even continue. We just backed it up and watched it again, and backed it up and watched it again. And about the 40th time, we said, all right, we'll go on with the rest of the movie. But by that time, our faces are stained with our tears. So anyway, they come in, and we're looking at them, and they're looking at us like, what the hell is going on? And I'm figuring they saw something the equivalent of Schindler's List, but we also look like we did. So anyhow, that has always been, for Bob and I, that and one specific Ren and Stimpy cartoon have always been the things that make us just bust a gut laughing. So Bob went on a website about, I think it's been about 11 years ago now, maybe longer. And he was talking about the farting dust mummies because he calls it the same thing I do. And I know we're incorrect, at least with the dust mummies part, but that's what we're used to calling them. And so he's talking to somebody about it, and all of a sudden he gets an email from the person who he and I used to be friends with. And it's one of the more vile emails, basically saying, what do you do? I did this, and yeah, it turned out like a piece of shit, but what have you ever done? Well, the truth of the matter is Bob is one of the premier television camera people in New York. And I know to some people watching, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's one of the biggest deals of the year. He's the guy who takes the ball going down in Times Square. That's his shot. So he's very much well respected. Anyway, he gets this horrendous letter from this guy that we both used to know, basically calling him a piece of shit. Now, I was used to those letters because this person's other friends had received letters very much the same when they had crossed this person, whether it had been they didn't tell him that a friend had died, he had to learn it on his own. Well, okay, but he also never mentions that when talking about that guy, eventually we all knew he was going to die because he was extremely sick. He'd use terms like, well, when he finally kicks the bucket. So I don't think anybody really thought he'd be that passionate about, this guy actually dying, because he's throwing out lines like that. Well, anyway, what ended up happening was the people who didn't tell him also got a letter like that, and vile, um, uh, calling him every name in the book. So now Bob has gotten one at this point, and I'm the only one left who never got this letter. So I automatically know, first of all, you crossed a line with Bob. I don't think Bob can have an enemy that I don't have. I just don't think it's possible. Um, Maybe if you silently hate him, that's fine. But if you've gone out and made a comment about him, I take that really personally. Because Bob and I have been through not actual war, but Bob and I have been through some shit, and we've come out the other side. So he truly is my brother from another mother. And as he's showing me this letter, he sent it to me. That person who wrote it got in touch with me and said, you might want to see what your buddy Bob is writing or saying about me. And this is what I sent him. And I read the letter again, and I contacted him by email, contacted this guy, and I said, he didn't say anything that I haven't said to you myself. That, first of all, you have nothing to do with this scene. He wasn't involved in the special effects. He wasn't involved in the audio part. He wasn't involved in the suits or the anything. So obviously we're not making fun of any work that you did. And the second thing is, I told you from day one that Bob and I call them farting dust mummies, and every damn time he comes down, we play that movie because that's what we need. It happens to be our drug of choice right now. So he comes down from Connecticut, from New York. That's almost in the machine waiting. And he didn't say anything. He didn't have a response. And except to basically say, well, I'm not going to take that shit from him. And I said, but it's not about you. It's about the movie. And I told you. So I said it again. I told you we rip on that scene nonstop. And his response was, yeah, right. And I thought, and now you're calling me a liar. Which, look, if I lie, I'll take the shit for it. If I don't lie, I will take zero shit for it. If I'm telling the truth, that's it. So at that point, we never were in contact again. And it's been 11 years, and I'm perfectly happy with that. I am not saying I miss the friendship or anything. I don't. It was actually a pretty negative part to my life. But buttoning it all up, I do come from this, I come at this from a very different place in that Spookies gave me a friendship that is evident right this minute, in that I now know Rick and Callie because of Spookies. I lost a friendship of decades over Spookies, the farting dust mummies, and I also at times had a little bit of background on Spookies because I was hearing it from this gentleman that I was friends with. So I really feel connected in a very strange way to Spookies because it gave me three different really unique looks at life. And but the one I am most happy about is our continuing friendship, Rick, because I get so much pleasure out of our friendship that and now knowing your wife and being able to work with you both gives me great joy. So I know it sounds like I'm breaking up. I'm not emotionally breaking up. My voice is, but um, but I feel that strongly about it. I mean, I have this wonderful relationship with both of you, and it's all because of that fucking movie. and
Wow.
farting dust mummies. So anyway, so that's my whole, my all encompassing tales of spookies, and it really is it's not the little engine that could, it's the little engine that should have had people left their mitts off of it, but they didn't. And I still say when creative people are doing creative things and your creativity is gathering money, then stay the fuck out of what they're doing and do what you do. Gather money, get a shit ton of money, even when you've paid for production, even when you've paid for pre-production and post-production, you can still get gobs of money to promote the movie, which this clearly was not promoted. And Rick and I have seen fistfuls of movies that weren't promoted right and should have gotten some great attention and didn't.
I agree. And going back to you professing your happiness that the Spookies, something so horrible like the Spookies, could bring you something good on the tail end. With Callie and I, we're very happy that it did happen that way, because we get to know you and we get to hear all these great things. So, is there anything else you want to sum up with the cinematic journey of the Spookies?
No, I think we put the battle cry out that producers should produce and gather money, and that's it.
Yeah, again, everyone's trying to make the best thing. Yeah, again, no one sets out like, man, we are going to make the shittiest movie. This is going to be great. We've miscast it. We've got
Right.
bad special effects.
Yeah,
We're
this
going.
isn't the producers.
Yeah, exactly. So,
So,
but yeah, that's the last thing I would contribute to the conversation about the Spookies, and we'll see if part 2 happens.
and before we all start crying, we'll just forget it. But yeah, it was. But I also I'm interested in the sequel. I don't know. I think at least two of the three of us, and probably all three of us, they're going to have to show some proof. And with me, they're going to have to show something else, but we won't go into that.
Chesty.
Esty! Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Rich, for joining us. We appreciate you.
It has been a real pleasure, and I love you guys. You know that. So I will see you soon.
Adios, El Capitan.
Till next time. And baby, did you want to say any final words?
I'm working on a Hard Edge trailer, which you guys will see here shortly. And I was thinking about the Spookies. It's very similar to a French film that was made in 19.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next round. Bye.